I do have to admit that I was moderately entertained all the way throughout, though most of that might have been because my wife and I had a lot of fun. Hello folks, welcome to another episode of TenorVision, hosted by yours truly, T. If you are new to our content, Opera Cecilia is a new opera company dedicated to run by and for emerging artists, seeking to take opera to places it has never been, in addition to carving out a new space for the opera industry. Today we are peeling back the layers of the 2021 film Falling for Figaro. This will be your only spoiler alert. We will be talking in depth about the movie, so if you do not like spoilers, come back to me after you've seen the movie. Places, everyone! Successful hedge fund manager Millie has a quarter-life crisis and turns down the promotion of a lifetime to pursue opera singing, a passion she has had ever since her boyfriend fell asleep on her shoulder during date night. After threatening the stability of their relationship, she flies across the world to pay a bitter old diva to berate her, inadvertently triggering the insecurity of her other student, only to have him end up proposing to her because no one in this movie has healthy boundaries. And now, a word from our sponsors. One of the things that really stood out to me in this movie is how incredibly privileged this lady was. She was already a boss business lady who had such a generous savings account that she was able to turn down a giant promotion in her job and instead travel the world for a year in pursuit of honing an entirely new craft. She didn't even balk at the fact that this teacher that was recommended to her was price gouging her. And I get it, it was supposed to be funny, but still, I could go into the details of how incredibly elitist this movie started out, but I feel like that's a topic that the Savvy Soprano can cover a little bit more in depth. So be on the lookout for one of those videos from her. I just think it's worth mentioning that the only reason that this premise is possible is because she was in such a financially secure position. The thing about our main character Millie is that she's hard to like. The only thing that she struggles with in this movie is self-expression and finding an identity, which are gigantic problems, to be frank. She just has so many weird, unlikable traits that I think the only real salvageable thing about this character is the fact that it's played by Danielle MacDonald. Wonderful actor. She knocked it out of the park in Dumplin' and in Bird Box. But Millie, the character herself, flirts so much with infidelity and has so much privilege going for her that it's kind of hard for her to be relatable. And the amount of total crap that she puts up from this fallen diva is unbearable. Before I get started on that bitch, and I know, I'm talking about character-wise here, the actor who portrayed her actually did a fantastic, phenomenal job because I hate her so much. I have to talk about Susan. This distinguished individual had so many problematic ideas and pieces of advice and other useless tidbits that I'm sure have wormed their way into many a young artist's minds, including myself. If you're curious about what other useless tidbits there are floating around in the opera world, click the link in the description for a breakdown from the Savvy Soprano for 5 horrible pieces of advice that you should not be following in opera. Anyway, this bitter old diva here is the poster child for what not to look for in a voice teacher. In addition to financial abuse, she is verbally abusive.
My God, you're even worse than I thought.
Has poor sense of physical boundaries.
La, come on, la. Where's your tongue? Keep singing.
A toxic habit of pitting students against each other.
She's dreadful, it'd be a complete waste of time.
He's my other student.
And I understand it's played off for laughs, but if you have a teacher that displays any combination of this behavior and you feel unsafe in any way, find yourself a different teacher. There are a myriad of super qualified individuals out there who would love to help you find your voice. High praise for Mr. Hugh Skinner, who played the baritone student, Max. He delivered a wonderfully vulnerable and emotionally expressive, if sometimes troubled, performance for the character. But Max himself is such an emotionally damaged character that he takes out his insecurities on his studio mate.
It's not so difficult to imagine.
out.
The two managed to trauma bond to such an extent that they confuse it for a genuine connection, and they nearly tie the knot. And another thing. Not enough credit is given to the singers who stood in as the singing voices to Hugh Skinner and Danielle MacDonald. No, it's not their real voices, and it really bothers me that it took me a solid 15 minutes the first time I watched this movie to pause it and try and find out who these singers were. But you heard it here first. So singing baritone for Hugh Skinner was Mr. Nathan Lay, and singing soprano for Danielle MacDonald was, forgive me if I butcher this, Stacey Aleume. Stacey, and last name which I am not worthy of pronouncing. Folks, your singing was wunderbar. Round of applause from Opera Cecilia. You can tell the problem with this movie was mainly due to the writing and the concept, because you still have these golden moments where the acting shines through, such as...
Can you feel the vibrations?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no denying that Danielle MacDonald is a wonderful actor. You have to give props to Hugh Skinner for giving such an emotionally charged performance. Heck, even the bitch diva gives a fantastic performance. I do have to admit that I was moderately entertained all the way throughout, though most of that might have been because my wife and I had a lot of fun with movie bashing comments based off of how they portray the opera industry. I'm uncomfortable rooting for the main couple simply because trauma bonding is not the healthiest place to start a relationship on, which makes me very happy to see that at the end they took a year break from each other just to pursue their own interests and rediscover themselves and grow in separate ways and farther away from that traumatic experience that was their voice teacher. As far as it being a romantic comedy, it was not very good, I'm gonna have to be honest. As corny or cheesy, whatever word you want to use, as Hallmark Christmas movies tend to be, I feel like they developed their characters in a much more healthy way than even this movie did. So I had a bit of a hard time getting over that hurdle. Overall, I would barely qualify this as a 5 out of 10. Barely worth a view. It was a good time burner. And I'm sad to say it because there's so much star power and such wonderful moments. And at times it did kind of make me, exhale a little faster than usual. If you liked this insight into the movie, subscribe for more videos such as this. Give a like, leave us a comment about how wrong I am or how much you agree with me. Suggestions for videos are always welcome. And until next time, see you then.